Coming up on Smart Tech Today, I am back in the studio. Matthew Casanelli joins me above my shoulder, and we've got a lot to talk about. First, we talk about Netflix getting into game streaming potentially, as well as some follow-up on celebrating devices that didn't quite make their crowdfunding goals. Then we talk about a washing machine from Samsung that won't let you use it unless you hand over all of your personal information. That just gets more and more complicated. Plus, I follow up on that Amazon Echo Dot story where your data may still be on the device even after properly factory resetting it. All that plus our picks of the week and even more news coming up on Smart Tech Today.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Thanks for listening to Twit Podcasts. As an ad-supported network, we are always looking for new partners who have services and products that will benefit our audience. Do you want customized host-read ads that stand out? Then the Twit Network is the perfect place for your next advertising campaign. Twit ads are original, specialized, and all shows include video, which means we can show off products, websites, and customized videos. Visit twit.tv/advertise and launch a tailored campaign today. That's twit.tv/advertise.
Welcome to Smart Tech Today, where we explain the exciting, dynamic, and, well, sometimes confusing subject that is the Internet of Things. I am Micah Sargent, joining you from the studio.
Welcome back, Micah. I am your other host, Matthew, and I am enjoying being on the TV in the studio. So for all the viewers, we've got the traditional Twit setup back, which is cool.
That we do. You can see the R2-D2, the HomePod model with my dog Mizzy covering the model, as that is a HomePod sleeve from a company, I think, called HomePod Sleeves. And then earlier there was a Jibo. Dead Jibo was in the corner.
Oh, yeah?
See right there? Jibo has eyebrows now, like frowny eyebrows, which makes it look angry that it got canceled. It didn't get canceled. It didn't say anything bad that it shouldn't have said. It got sunsetted.
Did you see, I just dropped in the Discord that there's like tiny action figures that somebody made as, I think it's kind of like parody of failed startups, and Jibo is in there. I forgot to put that in the links, but it officially just made it to the top of the show.
They're almost like little trophies that you can get of each of the failed startup ideas. And there's one for the stupid cooler that never made it and ended up getting into a bunch of like banking issues. And there,
the Juicero.
Yeah, the Juicero is also in there. I don't know what the Mac is in the background. I don't think that's part of it. I think that was just an extra one. A laptop that was supposed to be kind of like endlessly updated. Yeah, there's a lot. So there are quite a few that you can get and download.
Pretty cool.
Download? I mean buy. My brain. I was thinking they're NFTs or something, I guess. You can buy them. There you go. Chickenhead21 popped it into the chat. deadstartuptoys.com. It's just that I'm already enough of a hoarder, so I really don't want to add these to my own waste.
Yeah, I'm good. I already have enough like empty or dead products lying around that I don't need mock versions of those also. Exactly.
Yeah. I probably have at least two of them already. Whichever one's actually shipped, they are probably sitting at my house already. Let's move on to talk about something we talked a little bit about on Tech News Weekly earlier today, if you tuned in, about Netflix expanding into video games. Yes, we continue to talk about game streaming on the show because game streaming is one of those things that you end up finding it available on many a smart device. So whether it be your tablet, your phone, your Google Chromecast, your Apple TV, all these different devices end up being able to, depending on what apps are available and what services are available, stream games where it would normally take an expensive and sort of focused use console. You're able to play these games without needing that. And I think it's really neat. Netflix now has scooped up an EA exec, Electronic Arts exec, and is seemingly working on its own studio for games as well. But as I was talking to Ant earlier about this on Tech News Weekly, I think the big thing that Netflix has going for it, it kind of puts it in the same area as Amazon, but perhaps even better is Netflix's ability to stream content. And I think that is a huge decider in this, because as I had mentioned too, you can practically tie a piece of twine and a tin can on the end, and you can still watch a Netflix show because they've figured out how to properly buffer and, drop resolution as needed and bring it up as needed at these, microseconds. And so I think that they have the opportunity to nail it, where some of these other companies, Stadia, we've seen some issues with lag. GeForce Now, some issues with lag. Luna's been pretty solid, but again, Amazon is part of the backbone of the modern web. It's not a surprise. But it typically requires an Ethernet connection for those. I've found where I could see Netflix being able to pull off this promise of me switching from my wired MacBook Pro to my mobile iPhone and still play a game without having stuttering and slowdown, because they're so good at figuring out how to compress video and display it. So I think this could be cool, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts if you think Netflix is going to be able to pull this off, and if you think that they'll make it as a studio for gaming.
Yeah, I think those are all interesting points, especially just thinking of like Google and Amazon. They are well equipped for the web part, but Netflix is an entertainment company, and neither of the other two really are, or they're like at least trying to be, but it's not just native to their DNA. And so actually serving the customer in the best way, and with the variety of just like information that they could look up about or learn about their people, and sort of customize gaming for everyone, especially, I don't know, I could see it kind of hitting a similar market as iPhone gaming, sort of. I guess in general, cloud gaming is sort of an appeal to that market as well, versus the on-console stuff that's just quicker. But I think it's definitely interesting.
This, again, is one of those situations where it's early days, and we've seen some leaks that have come via spelunking into the app, and then, sources and sources and sources talking about it. So we'll see what this ends up looking like, how it ends up working. But this early kind of thought and potentiality of having this system is one that I'm kind of bullish about. I think that we could very well see Netflix being a good option. And, it's interesting. I think that Netflix, I'm wondering if they're going to end up doing what some of the others have done, which is they started out thinking they'd do their own studio and then went, that's not really where we want to be. Yeah. Let's just be a place let's be the interface that lets folks stream their games. We can handle that part because we know how to do that super well, but we're not game makers. So let's let the game makers make the games. We will just give you a way to do it and do it well. Or if in some ways Netflix has been, widely or wildly successful with some of its series, so maybe they do hire the right folks and they do create a game studio that produces games that people get into as much as they get into some of the Netflix series. And what will be really interesting to see is if we get Netflix series games that kind of, coincide with that content.
That's what I was going to say. Even that did just make me think of, I wonder if they saw the success of Stranger Things spinoffs also, because it's just like their major show, and then those have just like done well on other platforms. And I was even thinking of The Witcher, which is literally a deep, that was based off of a book too, but a deep game series that literally is on Netflix now as a show. So like if they actually made full movie series out of the games that you're playing too, is just a cool. I play some games that kind of only have lore around the actual gameplay, like Apex Legends. And if they actually made like a TV show about that, I would probably watch it. So like, that is an interesting angle to it beyond just the delivery of the cloud streaming stuff. It is just funny tied in with all of the App Store stuff that Apple has against cloud gaming and Microsoft. It's like Netflix and Apple have always been partners, but sort of contentiously with all of that. So it is like just them getting on the other side of the App Store's position is a funny angle too. But
yeah, that's true.
We'll see how it all plays out. Maybe some of that.
Was that a pun?
Details. No, it wasn't, but
the answer is always yes.
I mean, yes, I'm super clever.
Yes, we shall see how it all ABXY plays out. Let's move on. Unless you have any other thoughts that you want to add to that. Again, as we pointed out, we got to wait and see because it's just early rumors. So until it's a thing, it's not a thing.
But interesting keeper I am.
Yeah. What's Samsung doing with its washing machine? A little troubling, eh?
Yeah, they are requiring access to your contacts and location through their app in order to use it, which I think is pretty funny. I feel like this sounds like one of those things where, of course, the story is in Vice, so they'll like position it as Samsung is like requiring contacts to use your washer, whereas it is like the app, and it sounds like a situation where I could see specifically at a company like Samsung. It's just like, we need to know about our customers, and the app is the way to do it. But it literally is, if you deny access, you can't use your washer at that point. And so it's just pretty amazing it's got to be just one of those smart home stories that we have to mention, because it's like, oh, your washing machine needs to know who your boss is and stuff like that in order to function. It's just an absurd story.
Yeah, it's got horrible reviews in the App Store because the app will literally just close if you don't give it permission to access these things. They need to make it incredibly clear why it needs this access, and then let me make an informed decision based on that. But ultimately, to me, this just is one of those times where you go, you know what? I think that I'm not going to buy this washing machine because it requires all of this information. Yeah. This is really frustrating, and I've seen some developers roll things back when this happens if they get enough pressure on them. Oh my God, that's amazing. Sorry, a beautiful pun in the chat. It's not a washing machine. Kevin says it's a watching machine. So having these rolled back is, I think, one of those things that happens if you give that pressure. But the egregious part about this, as you point out, and as you know, these folks are saying, is that give me the option. Many people are just going to roll through and go, okay. But give me the option to still use the insert curse words here, washing machine I paid for, if I choose not to let it have access to this. This is ridiculous that I've spent the money on this machine, probably more than you would spend on a non-smart machine, and then not let me use it because you don't also get access to things that I don't want you to have access to.
I agree. I wonder if this is something that they'll roll back, especially once there's just a little more attention for it, because it's kind of like people on Reddit and stuff like that post about it, or it's got low ratings, but they're not as motivated until it gets coverage like this. So we'll see.
Now, according to Vice, there are this is one of the older apps, and they do have a new app that doesn't require as much or doesn't ask for all these permissions. So it could be that part of the reason is that folks haven't updated to the newer app that has this fixed, and they haven't fixed. Perhaps it could have been a bug where, you know, it tries to do X, Y, or Z, and then it can't, and so then it crashes, and that's why it was, you know, quitting instead of it being like, nope, you don't get access. But then Samsung should communicate that instead of not responding to requests for comments. So that's rather obnoxious. Do better, Samsung, because these are the kinds of things that make people hesitant to use technology that could be better and could potentially be something that you'd want to use. They don't, because of these kinds of stories that come up that make you go, yeah, I'd rather have the thing that doesn't connect to anything.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's part of the problem is like, even though it's semi-innocuous or just like kind of a weird issue, it still is just like something that people are going to remember, and that ends up affecting it over time.
Yeah.
Our other story is about just the newer version of the SmartThings app that actually lets you track your energy usage too now, which is pretty cool. So basically, if you are like using Samsung appliances or HVAC products, you can see how power hungry they are and that kind of eco footprint stuff for your home. So this is just another simple story, but I think it's one of those good things that I'm getting more and more interested in because I just have so many things plugged in everywhere, and I'm curious how much power is being drawn. The one that I just stumbled upon because it was random, just with the I just plugged into a smart outlet, the Eve Thread one that I had, but my rechargeable batteries, I was trying to figure out, I'm doing a whole testing thing, but exactly how long it takes for some of those to charge and see how much power that costs. And then just kind of like, is this worth it or not? I assume it is because it's less than buying a whole new set of batteries every single time, but just knowing specifically how much it costs to recharge those batteries over time and when the power is being used also. That's kind of my strategy for energy usage. Do you use anything like that?
I'm not really. Yeah, I mean, so I should, because my last energy bill was rather high. And, I think part of it, of course, was running a lot of this technology at home, day in and day out, that, some of that I'm sure will lift. But also, while my AC was out, I had what am I trying to say? The townhome complex I'm a part of gave me a plug-in unit to use until they were able to fix it. And those things are incredibly power hungry. Not even the ones that go in the window, which are less power hungry, but the one that's portable that you can keep inside. Those ones are really power hungry. And so I know that played a huge role. So that's gone down. But I think the problem is the feasibility of doing that. Like the amount of money that you could possibly end up saving by monitoring your energy consumption at every outlet is not equivalent to the number of energy monitoring devices you'd have to buy to be able to monitor your energy usage at all of the different outlets in your home. Yeah. So you would have to pick and choose, but then by picking and choosing, you may be missing out on something that actually is pulling, more power than you would expect. So you kind of have to have them for every outlet. So in that way, I think that is where it becomes an issue of, okay, am I getting what I need to be able to track this as I want to? So yeah, I'm not big on it. Around the holiday season, for me, I have, lights up, and I try to get LED as much as possible for holiday lights. But on the rare occasion, like the tree that I purchased, unfortunately, as a pre-lit tree, it came with incandescent lights, which I didn't know because I didn't read the description very clearly. But because of that, then, incandescent lights are going to pull far more energy than LED lights are, even at that small size. So that was something where I did have an energy monitor going, and I could just see kind of what the impact was around the holiday season, where you're already spending more money than you do other times of the year.
Fair. I do think it's fair that doing like constant energy monitoring would just be, at a certain point, you're going to spend more on all of the smart outlets than you would save in the money. Depends how much energy you're using, I guess. But I think a thing that I didn't even realize for the longest time with the same type of room weather control is that I can just move it and test it and see over time, like, oh, for a month I put it in this room and it could see that this thing was using this much energy.
And this is where you have an Airtable set up with some shortcuts to keep track of all of that stuff. Whereas I'm like,
not yet.
I don't want to figure all of this out. And has it been a month yet? I don't think so.
See, I know this is one of the ones where if I had it all going constantly, I would absolutely have a dashboard that showed me like at all times what it would be like. But I do think it's like, oh, okay. Like kind of, it makes me think of meal tracking, because a lot of times I don't I mean, I just don't keep it up because I don't care ultimately, but doing it a little bit just gives me that information that I was like, oh, this actually is like, I should try it on my heater because of what I was thinking about that when you were saying your AC, because our heat bill is often high and we did just get actual heating. So it's kind of hard to tell yet, but I'm curious how much mine contributes to it. But like the same thing with meal tracking is when I do that and then put in a bag of chips, I'm like, man, that few chips is that many calories. It's like,
did you say heating?
Dang it. Yes, I mixed my things there, but
sorry, you had heating installed, or you're talking about like individual space heaters?
Both.
Oh.
So that's why I'm trying to differentiate how much my space heater is adding on top of our now just higher heating bill because we have actual heating. In
you have electric heating?
Yeah, or the HVAC. I don't remember what it's called. Yeah, I got it installed last fall because we didn't have any heat at all for like 3 months, and I was absolutely miserable. So.
I think California is not really fond of natural gas, so it might be an electric system.
Yeah, probably.
Mine is not. Mine's a gas system, so that's why I was curious. It shouldn't have much of an impact on your electric bill if it's gas. And I mean, given that you live in a really old house, one would think it's gas. But of course, the space heaters would make a difference. So. Yeah, now I'm curious. You should really know that, though. You should definitely look into that because
I'm thinking of PG&E, my bill, so it's all together. So that's why I'm not differentiating.
Gotcha.
Just our costs have gone up as we've been using our heating.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, I was like, I don't actually know. They just kind of, it's like I wasn't part of the installation or anything. So
well, for the sake of being aware, if there's a natural gas leak, you should definitely check that out. Although that smell of rotten eggs is hard to miss.
I will write it down. Check if our heating is gas.
Yes, please do.
I'm pretty sure it's not.
You should also write down, don't light any matches until I know. All right, let's move on to the next topic here. Berkeley is not fond of natural gas either, says Scooter.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think it's just completely illegal here. Although we do have a gas stove because it was from before that time.
All right. Oh, God, I'm so jealous. I love gas.
That's what I was going to say. I just wanted to say that because I knew you would know that is good.
Gas stove. I miss my gas stove. All right. Let's talk about Wyze, who continues to make awesome products that don't cost an arm and a leg. And this time they're getting into the light strip business. They have a regular light strip and a pro light strip. The pro light strip is individually addressable across multiple zones of color. The regular one is, as many a light strip is, one color across the whole line, but up to 32 feet of LED light strip. That's 32 feet. That's quite a few feet.
Yes,
the whole 32 of them.
and both sides, yeah, for both the regular and the pro, you can get 16.4 or 32.8 and the strips, which is pretty cool.
$31 is not much more than the $26 for the light strip.
Seriously.
And the light strip pro. So it's almost worth it going to the pro model if you want to have those independently addressable zones. I really think Wyze does a fantastic job of, again, creating products that don't cost a bunch of money, but that are still good at doing things that they do. I've got the Wyze vacuum cleaner that has the LiDAR sensor built into it, the robotic vacuum, and the Roomba one is like $1 bajillion. This one is far less than $1 bajillion and does a fantastic job of mapping the space and properly cleaning the space and differentiating between rooms and remapping the space whenever I inevitably move things around or put something where it didn't used to be. And just continually impressed. I've got Wyze cameras as well.
Yeah, me too.
And they don't cost a bunch of money, but yet they still work as as advertised. So I'm probably going to check out these strips soon.
It's like the perfect description of Wyze stuff, where it's like nothing fancy, but it's exactly as advertised.
Yes.
So totally makes sense. And these, they say that they're going to have music mode and sun match, which sun match makes sense just because you can just based on the time of day. But I'm curious how it'll sync to your music exactly. but that kind of stuff is always pretty cool. So
I want a hole in my wall that I can hang out in. Did you see that? For folks who are watching the video, there's a part of the video where these kids climb up into like a nook that's been built into the wall. It's a circle. That's so
and they have
cool.
a blue light strip in there. Nice.
Yeah. Although that's horrible given that it's almost bedtime, it looks like, and they're blasting their eyes with blue light. Let me talk to their parents. I need numbers. Anyway, that's really cool. I think that's, again, I'm going to have to check those out and compare them to what's the company that we got light strips from?
Maras.
No, that's what I was going to say.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah. They make some good light strips, but they don't have the independently addressable ones. So, yeah. Now, these are not HomeKit enabled, right?
No. So that is most Wise stuff is just Amazon and Google Assistant. So that is worth knowing. But I'm pretty sure people tend to build home bridge integrations for Wise stuff. I'm not sure if this would immediately work with any existing thing, but I bet people would update it too. So that can always be worth checking out. I like just the alternate versions that are within a decent price for each other, because it is like you don't always need the multiple color zones, so you can just get the cheaper one. And I guess the other thing about the Pro version, it's got like it's protective coating, so it's like a little bit more durable and just looks nicer. So it's kind of like the other ones are for like recessed lighting almost.
Gotcha.
And,
yeah, they don't have that protection over the top of the LEDs in the strip, whereas the Pro has that covering like you would find with Philips Hue light strips. That makes sense. Okay. That's good to know for sure. All right, let's move on to the next bit of news.
Every day can bring changes, challenges, and opportunities that can also change your personal or business financial goals and priorities. As a true partner, Sandy Spring Bank can make it all a bit easier. Someone who really listens, understands, and then creates solutions in hard times and good times. We'll always strive to be your advocate, today and every day. That's real banking for real life and real business. Visit sandyspringbank.com/real. Member FDIC.
It is time for the next bit of news, and it's our first story is about Amazon, who is going to be creating on its Kindle devices, already available on its iOS devices, is serialized content. So it's my understanding that this is kind of like a fun way for folks who are not who aren't able to join a publishing company or be backed by a rep who are creating content to be able to put their stuff out on the web. So does this mean I can buy my Slash Fiction in the Amazon iOS Kindle app?
Maybe. I don't know exactly what you mean by that, but it's kind of just it's like a whole new story like format, it seems like, where it'll just kind of be like little I mean, I guess stuff like this has been done before, obviously, with novellas, but it's like a whole token system also for authors. So that's kind of interesting. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know. I think it's kind of like a micro payments for stories.
Yeah. It gives people, I think, an opportunity to. So I think about authors who are world builders, and they create these beautiful worlds, and then over the course of time, either while they're working on their series or after they're done working on their series, they write little in between books about different characters that they particularly fall in love with or think are interesting, and where those would typically then have to go through the whole process of writing and selling the book to the publisher, getting the publisher to go, yeah, we want to publish this too, and making money off of them or not making money off of them in comparison. An author could do this in a way that makes them money. It's interesting how it works with the token system, where each token is worth 100 words. So if the author writes, a huge story, that's part of this, then you might have to spend more tokens depending. So this is the example that they give. For example, a 3,025 word episode purchased in a 200 tokens bundle would give an author 0.1493. But if that episode was bought in a 1,100 tokens bundle, the writer would net $0.1362. So it says the model also makes things complicated for authors. They get a generous 50% of the revenue, but because the values of tokens vary, this means that the rate will also vary. So it's kind of tough.
Yeah, that's interesting how they like pass on the cost to the author in that way. But it is just like, because if you spend $15 to get more tokens, they're just worth, it's just on the total cost, not the actual token. I think that's why I don't love tokens as a system, because in many ways it's like gaming, where you end up spending more than you think, or like you're prepaying for everything before you actually use it also. But I do think as a way to encourage, especially like you can compile these into a book afterwards once there's 10 episodes at least. So there are like terms, but it makes me think of, I've been just kind of researching, this is a sort of a stretch, but it's called cohort-based courses, where you like take an online course with a group of people and you have collaboration with those people at the same time. And like, just part of it, at least for the creator, is that they don't have to finish the entire arc of everything before you just start. Like, you are continuing to program the course as like you're Netflix going along with the people. And so like the author can sort of, but Netflix are probably still already done with it before they start shipping, but like the author can be working on it and delivering it as they're going. So, and so it's kind of a... It's
like what are those called? Soap opera.
Yeah. Like the serialized stuff, or even, I don't know, I guess South Park is one of the main examples of like they made that every single week. But just in terms of for an author, it could be an interesting way to, it's just the serialization of the story in addition to the delivery to the people. So it could be interesting.
In this house, we don't mention SP.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of like, it's not the best show in the world. I think the interesting thing about this platform is that it doesn't work on your Kindle. It's like a Amazon.
Yet.
Yeah, that's fair. But you'd think that they would do it right away, I guess. So we'll have to see. Maybe they're just kind of testing out the whole ecosystem before they roll it out to the actual devices.
Yeah,
I think that's where it makes more sense to me. I think on the phone, it's kind of, it feels like they're trying to do Instagram stories for books or something.
Oh God, do you have to?
Not really, that? But that's why I'm like, if they do it poorly, it can get into that realm really quickly.
That's true.
Or just seeing executives at big companies being like, we need to do that. So
yeah, that's a good point. Hopefully, what I want is, because I just finished a series of audiobooks from Audible, and sometimes what will happen is the Audible audiobook and the book itself are not synced up in terms of publishing times. And so the author will have written and published the book, and then they find the person who's going to do the audiobook. And so if it's a series that I really am into, then I will sometimes just go to the Kindle store and find the Kindle book and get that so that I can read it myself versus waiting for the audiobook to come out later. I should mention that Audible is a continued sponsor of Twit. And so I really like the idea that potentially, I could get a couple of chapters of the next book that I want to check out. And then it brings it in line with all those different games on Steam that are doing like early access stuff. There is an interesting story where Amazon seems to be joining the ranks, or thinking about joining the ranks of Google in offering sleep tracking with radar technology. So you may know about, the Google device that you're meant to have next to your bed, and it uses the Soli radar system to monitor your movement while you sleep and use that to track your sleep and figure out different things about how you're sleeping, how you're not sleeping, your breathing patterns, etc. Amazon has been discovered looking into radar tracking of their own for sleep tracking. Again, I'm curious to see how this bears out, because in my thought, there's no more precise an option than to actually have something in your bed that is sensing your sleep. And when it comes to this stuff, I want accurate data that isn't messed up by a partner who moves around in bed or, has breathing issues, or if you've got pets that you sleep with, them, playing a role, or even, just looking at something from the side of the bed versus actually being in the bed and sensing all of it. Those are two different things. And so I do think that, I don't know. I am wondering why now Amazon's hopping on board or considering hopping on board this same thing, when I almost wish that if they were going to do this, they would go the bed tracking route that I think is one of the best ways to do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm sort of curious about. And that's why I just thought it is just like they're nowhere near doing this yet, at least. But I'm curious if this is just going to be like the technology for sleep tracking that becomes the standard, because these two major smart home companies are embracing it. And Apple has owned the Bedit company, which is the one that puts the thing in between your mattress and can detect movement and things like that, for a couple of years, but they haven't really done a whole lot with it. Like, they've added sleep tracking to the Apple Watch, but in terms of the actual feature itself, they don't have. I wonder if that's actually something. Now, I just realized if they had an Apple Watch and then they also had people using the Bedit, if they could basically correlate that data and then understand from the people using their watch, like through machine learning and stuff like that, that this is the same as if you were tracking with the Bedit. So they could kind of do the same analysis using that like correlated data without actually requiring everybody in the world to put something under their bed. I think that like physical part, well, I agree, it probably is better. It just makes sense literally that it would be better just because it's underneath your bed. It's the little pee in the bed under the mattress thing.
I thought you meant PEE.
Yeah, sorry. That's why I rephrased under the mattress. I think
I can't sleep. There's pee in the mattress.
That's how you can tell that you didn't sleep well.
I'll never be able to sleep in this bed again. No matter how many feather beds you bring me, there's urine everywhere.
Dear Lord. I think I lost my train of thought with that.
Choo-choo.
But I'm just curious to see if this radar stuff, how accurate it really is. I saw other reviews of the Nest Hub go out, I think this week, that were saying that this is, I guess it was saying it was the best smart display, which I think it always has been, but just that the sleep tracking stuff is pretty useful. So I will own my Apple bias that my brain is like, if Apple does this, then I'll agree that that's the best one, versus if they did something else, I'd be like, oh, this is probably better. So that's just my first thought, was like, if somebody like them, or I don't know, I guess it's hard to tell.
Here's my problem.
Still doing it too.
We got to look at the science of it. And I will be honest that I have not looked at the most recent, because I've not done a sleep podcast in a while. And so I haven't looked at the most recent studies based around sleep. But if we look at the history of the way that we best calculate sleep, the way that we best understand sleep and our body's circadian rhythm, it has always, always, always been based on brain monitoring and heart monitoring and respiration monitoring. And those technologies, those readings all come together. Brain is the best way to do it on its own. But when you look at the brain monitoring and then you look at heart and respiration and you see the connections between them, that's whenever you get to start using those as means of understanding what stage of sleep a person is in and then where they are in their cycle. And so given that we've got such a long and studied history of that with so much data related to that, to look at this, how much do you move around as a way to determine that, I am skeptical of the accuracy in comparison to those. So I guess I would need to see more data to see how that is a better option. And that's why, you joke about it being the Apple bias. So let's take it away from that and instead say, let's look at just the from an objective point of view, a wearable on your wrist, be it an Apple Watch or another, that is looking at the heart rate and depending on what the wearable is, heart rate and respiration data based on your O2 values over the course of your sleep. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think the watch itself would be. I was just like looking. I don't think I've seen things that are like, is this better than that? Just that it's a different way to do it, and that just radar can do some of the breathing and stuff like that because it has such a sensitivity, while also compared to the cameras not being creepy because they're not actually seeing what's happening. It's just measuring the differences. And so like I just even found a story that was talking about how just the fact that stuff is so much more readily available than it ever used to be does provide a level of data that just like something under the bed doesn't. That would be movement, but it can't. Like these are literally sitting there and can see like it's saying that your chest moved a centimeter breathing or something. Not that it could detect motion in that way, not literally see it, but like it sounds like it just the accuracy would be a lot higher.
Given the abysmal quality that one gets most of the time with portrait mode photography on either Apple's iPhones or Google's Pixel devices, those are using LiDAR sensors to determine depth.
But that's not radar. These are specifically radar things, which is different. I think I totally agree. I want to look into this more, and I think this is something we'll both do is like look into like we'll get to later that you have a whole research paper that I want to know, because I do think radar, that this just like one company doing it was interesting, but now that two are like in line, it's a trend. And so I want to understand more specifically what this means, because just from cursory research, it does sound like it provides more than what you could get otherwise. And I think it'll always be a combination of all of this that would provide the best information, which is why they try to do all of the Amazon's got the like body stuff, or Google owns Fitbit now and things like that. So it's cool. I think the potential for this is interesting, and especially I think it just like getting past the part where you're like, oh, they're watching me with radar in my sleep versus knowing that this could be like really useful technology turns that from like creepy into like, oh, this is pretty, I don't know, less creepy. So all depends on your perspective there, but I definitely want to do more research on this.
Yeah. See, and everything that I'm seeing, and as you said, we'll do more research on this, but I'm looking at LiDAR versus radar, and radar has a lot more noise in the signal because of the difference in absorption depending on what you're using. There ends up being a lot more resolution with LiDAR. So,
well, but LiDAR specifically to see, radars to not see, but to just determine the movement. So that's why LiDAR, nobody's using LiDAR to track your sleep. That's for the camera part. So that's why I'm just differentiating. You were saying the phone camera. I just think those are different applications of a similar technology.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to have to do more research on this because for me, I feel it goes back to what I said before. is this new technology a better way of tracking sleep than the technology that has been used for a lot longer and has more data behind it for this specific thing? I don't know the answer to that, and so I do want to find out the answer to that to the best of my ability, because there has to be something to it if other companies are jumping on board and experimenting with using radar as opposed to LiDAR for this. Radar as opposed to LiDAR in general, but in particular, this technology for tracking sleep. Now I can ask you if you know about Diane von Furstenberg.
Not really. So
I didn't either. Diane von Furstenberg is a Belgian artist, a Belgian designer who has some recognizable patterns, I guess, and has created some patterns for Amazon's Echo. So you can purchase some specially designed Diane von Furstenberg style Echoes that have her patterns on them. So there's kissy lips and some sort of sound wave tiger or leopard. And then, I don't know, a neon zebra.
They have titles.
Oh, they do?
That's why I was like,
I like
it's
my
called
titles.
Midnight.
But...
Yeah, that's why I was like, it's Midnight Kiss, iCats, and Twigs. I put the actual Amazon link in there
trees.
too.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's kind of just like a actually cool looking Echo Dots, which I thought was interesting. And I assume this might mean more if you are into design and know who she is and everything like that. But I think this is just kind of an interesting expansion of the day one program from Amazon, where they're just like, the Echo Dots are kind of boring. Like we're not going to sell and manufacture 100,000 of these in order to like just do some cool designs. I do wish they just had removable covers or something.
That's
like that.
what I was thinking. Let me take the one I already have and get an iCat to put on it.
So I think I'd just like to see more of this happen. I'm curious to see if these get crowdfunded, and we can probably see
Well, poor Diane von Furstenberg. She already did the work. I guess they probably,
is she going to get the money or not?
They paid her, I'm sure. Now, I don't know why I said that. That's silly. But at the same
it's kind
time,
of funny to think about. You're right.
If I made a thing and then it's like, no, nobody wants that. That kind of sucks.
Yeah, that'd be brutal. So
I'd be like, well, I'm not ever doing that again.
Yeah, it is an interesting strategy. I'm curious how many people just know about this beyond us. I've never heard anyone else talk about it, and I always find this in the research stuff, just the day one products in general too. But
I'm still waiting on my printer. It doesn't come until I think it was like September.
Yeah, I guess that lead time kind of this program might take a while to gain steam if that's the case, but
we'll see. Up next, so you've got Roku that partners with certain TV manufacturers. So I've got a TCL Roku TV. Amazon also partners with certain television manufacturers, including Toshiba and Insignia, to make Fire TVs. And so now Toshiba and Insignia Fire TVs, some of them, are getting AirPlay 2 and HomeKit support, which gives folks who use those platforms the ability to stream content to them via AirPlay 2. With AirPlay 2, you can actually select multiple devices throughout your home to use as speakers. And that's one of the bits of magic of AirPlay 2. And then with HomeKit enabled technology, then you have the ability to make adjustments to the TV with the remote, more so than you could if you didn't. So you can turn on and off the television. You can change the input, and some other options are all available via your phone or other device to use that. So this is more evidence of Amazon and Apple playing ball. And I like having the technology on my TCL Roku TV. I don't use it very often, but on the rare occasions where it does come up, it's quite nice. Like right now, because I'm running beta software, I am having some issues with streaming the audio from the Apple TV to my HomePod, where it was solid whenever it wasn't on beta. Now, every once in a while, it'll cut out. So I just have that turned off right now while I'm in beta. And being able to adjust the volume controls on the television using the Siri remote or my phone, both work just fine. And that's all because of those integrations that are available through Roku and Apple working together.
I'm curious if this is the first Amazon product that I could use with shortcuts, because it could, but I just in general, you can do that HomeKit kind of control, but you're totally right that I was just imagining, I've been listening to podcasts about Apple stuff for years and years. And I just remember when Apple Music first came to Android and it was like, oh my gosh, Apple's like out of their walled garden. And just to see a headline now that Amazon is adding AirPlay support and HomeKit to it's to their Fire TVs. So it's like, it makes sense in that ecosystem, but it is still just surprising that people are playing nice together and the customer is actually winning instead of getting screwed over by them all fighting and holding out. So I hope that this, just the smart TV trend and HomeKit and AirPlay 2 and all of those working together better is kind of the precursor to what we hope is going to be happening with Matter, where all the smart home stuff will work as well. And so it just seems, it is just kind of surreal. Like I love this kind of stuff just because AirPlay and Chromecast are only good when every TV has it. And so until that point, not that it's only good, but it's only just kind of that universal thing that people can expect until all these TVs have it. So that's very cool.
All right. What is next? That's my what is next sound. This is so a new feature for Apple Watch in the next version of watchOS. In beta and public beta is a feature called Focus. iMore has written a guide for how you can use Focus on your Apple Watch. I just used it earlier today, and in fact, before this show too, to make sure I was focused. Although I was just talking about this on, I think, Clockwise. I don't really use anything aside from Do Not Disturb. I know you, on the other hand, have like 90 different focus things.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, come on. Go ahead. Tell us about all the different focus modes you have.
Let me get the link and I'll drop it in the Discord, because I think I have 18 focus modes.
Oh my God.
Which is now more than the actual limit of what's possible on iOS, because I think they took away the feature or I think it's limited to 12. I've been trying to figure out
unlimited focus modes.
Yeah, exactly. I'm currently in my podcasting focus mode, and I have one for YouTube, research, streaming, shortcuts, planning, photography, my newsletter, music, home, health, work, and personal, which is it. So part of the reason I did this is you can have 15 home screens. I feel like a crazy person, but Apple lets you have this many. And so I do have
I see. So it's
900 shortcuts. And
it's not your fault. Apple lets you have that many. So
I mean, God forbid people make technology features that their users take advantage of and use, because I feel like I get punished for actually using their products a lot.
Fair enough.
I feel like I hear this from Merlin all the time. He's like, I use the Merlin man uses the Apple TV app so much. And he's like, how does nobody love this as much as I do and actually see all of these problems with it? But my whole strategy with focus modes is to hide and show all of those combinations of home screens that I have, which have stacks and stacks of shortcuts widgets on there. So like for me, it's in many ways going to be one of the only realistic ways that I can actually use all of my shortcuts, by intelligently showing me just my podcasting screen with all of the shortcuts on it at the right time, versus having to like go choose that all the time. I just love the idea, and it's very much, I just want to set home screen action and shortcuts so I can do this without having 18 focus modes, because I could probably get away with more of it. But on the Apple Watch, and just as a feature overall, these things are great because it basically prevents all notifications from coming in until you actually allow that. And it'll even intelligently determine over time. It's like, hey, I saw this morning. It said, you don't receive Discord messages during work. Do you want to move this to personal or something like that? Where it was like, when I was in my work scene, it could tell that I was getting these notifications, but I probably shouldn't. Or the opposite way, where I was in my personal one and I was like getting emails or something like that. But even cooler is it syncs across all your devices too. I can't remember if I actually mentioned this when it first came out, but one of the awesome features from the watch is basically that it controls your phone and your iPad and your Mac, although it doesn't set home screens, unfortunately. I can't do that as well there. But it's pretty cool just to be able to use your Apple Watch to set your iPhone and iPad home screens. So I think that's going to be a underrated feature of the focus mode on Apple Watch, is just being able to switch your focus from there and not then your devices are just ready for you when you get to them. So this is one of my favorite features of iOS 15 by far. And I'm probably going to have to file some feedback to see if I can actually keep this many. I'm just like, I don't want to delete any because I can't add them back in now. So it's absurd.
All right. Now that we're all focus up. There is another story about a kettle, a smart kettle, that lets you use the Google Assistant with it. I think this is one of those places where folks are often looking for smarts to be added. Like, I don't have to wake up in the morning and do all the button pressing. When my alarm goes off, the kettle's already ready for me with hot water and ready to go. That's an ideal world. That's a world I want to live in. I'm still waiting for a coffee machine that can do that in the way that I want it, where I'm not going to get into it right now.
Wait, how? I want to know.
Well, I want it to be, there's one that's coming out. I think it's called Spinn, SPINN, I believe is what it's called. And it's the one that I want, but they're so expensive. It's not just a coffee pot that turns on and does pour over. No, I want a machine where you put in beans into an airtight hopper with UV protection. And then it will pull the beans and roast them. Not roast them, sorry. I don't need them to be roasted. They can already be roasted. You will pull the beans and grind them fresh.
Yeah, roasting them is pretty intense at that point.
That's over the top. Pull the beans and grind them and then fresh brew a cup of coffee. That's what I want. And there's, as I said, there's a machine called Spinn that promises to do that. So, oh my God. Sorry, Reverb Mike in the chat says that he keeps his coffee beans, or that they keep their coffee beans in the freezer.
I was just going to say, too, that I think I reheated my coffee this morning twice in the microwave.
Why is everyone trying to kill me?
Also, I realized at the last second I was rearranging stories, and that this one did get me because it's called the iKettle, but this only works with Google Assistant. So this was not supposed to be in this section, but it is not a HomeKit device, if that is confusing. But I do just love, I wish I have a kettle that sets to the right temperature and everything, that I can't like turn it on and schedule it and everything like that with this. So I would definitely use this, because I will like prep my coffee the night before and then have it so that I just come down in the morning and turn it on right away and it's ready to go. Because otherwise it's like, I always get my whole stuff ready and then start making coffee. And I'm like, dang it, I could have had it all heating up at this point. So you do have to like time it otherwise. So these are just a nice, convenient feature that I don't know if there's a good HomeKit one. I didn't think this one had it, but I'm curious. I haven't actually looked at that. So I will report back.
All right. What's next?
The Elago locator case for...
We love Elago.
The Apple II. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we said Elago was going to come out with something that would give you AirTag ability. I have to mention it's incredibly ugly and hideous, but AirTag ability for your Apple TV remote.
Yeah, so it's like a big silicone thing that you slide your remote in, and then there's a little
turns it into a
kind
camel.
of curved back. So at least it is like integrated and kind of looks normal at that point, but it is just a rounded remote. I mean, I actually have a.
It probably feels
Xbox
better in the
Media
hand.
remote. Yeah, it's like I've got an Xbox Media remote that's shaped like that. So I already think that the new Apple TV remote is pretty big, and so this is like very chunky. And when you have that large bump on the back, is this going to get lost in your couch? So then, like, are you ever going to actually use the AirTag with it? I still feel like this is a thing where I've seen a lot of. I'm just going to say it because I've been itching to had this feeling of I want Apple to just do a meme release where they just add the weather app for iPad, they add the calculator app, they give AirTags to the Apple TV remote, and they're just like, fine, you have it. Like, stop complaining about these things, because once everybody gets them, they're barely going to use it. And it's like, it's absurd that Apple didn't put the AirTag in the Apple TV remote. It's like, I don't think so. So if you really do want it, this company does do great stuff. Are they the ones that I can't remember? I had an old Apple Watch stand from them. Now I have one that looks like a little Macintosh that I charge with. Mm-hmm. But I think mine was stolen actually when I got robbed like 4 years ago.
Holy moly!
Or when our car got broken into. That sounds. I didn't get mugged or anything, but
okay,
it was in my bag with everything. Yeah.
They make the remotes for the remote control covers that I've talked a lot about before. And so it's nice to have them there as well. With this, again, that sort of all encompassing design. It's not pretty, but again, it might feel better in the hand than even the new Siri remote does right now. And I do like the fact that you can put a drawstring at the bottom. That's one of the things that is missing from. Yeah. Even though it was 14 stupid bucks, I always bought the leather loop for the old school Apple TV remote because I didn't use it so much as a tassel to hold on my hand, to sort of keep it around my wrist. Instead, it made the thing more discoverable and also grabbable. Exactly. I could just, pick up the loop and get it. And so I tended to put them. And what was clever is that it had this unique little, these teeth on either side of the lightning plug, and so it would lock in place. Then you have to squeeze to undo it. Now I tried to take the leather loop and plug it into the new Apple TV Siri remote, and there are no little divots inside of the remote in order to lock it in place. So the leather loop doesn't work for the new one. And I assume that the reason for that is because they're really trying to move away from that controller being that remote being a game controller, and the whole point of the loop was so that you could use it as a game controller. But yes, look at that. Now that is a controller.
The Nintendo.
Yes. And then you put that big old chunky rubber thing on there and it feels even better. I love that thing.
Wrist straps are very, I have them for my camera, and it is amazing when you have a really well-built one. I can just swing my, I'm going to say expensive camera just from my wrist loosely, and I totally trust it. So those are helpful.
The case I have on my AirPods Pro has a little, the two little holes on the side, and I've got they're smaller. They're not wrist ones. They're just enough for a finger to slide into with some extra room, and that makes the AirPods Pro so much easier to carry as well.
Alago's website, you should check it out too. People just listening, because they have tons of little things like that, like AirPods cases. I didn't see this one. Got me. They have what looks like a Mini Cooper charge case for your AirPods that fits in there, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, I have the W3 stand for Apple Watch, which is on there too. That's just it looks like a classic Macintosh, and then when you put your watch in and it goes into sleep mode, I don't know what it's called, the charging mode, it looks like it's the screen of the Mac, which is pretty clever.
Yep. All right, up next, some more smart devices and some news that ended up getting rolled back. All right, up first, the one more smart device we want to talk about. We mentioned Meros earlier, and talked about their light strip. And now they've got a HomeKit-enabled LED desk lamp, which is rather attractive. It's a really nice-looking desk lamp.
I'm interested. This is like maybe the most expensive Meros product because it's $64.99, and usually their stuff is like, I'll say affordable, not cheap, because I haven't tested too much, so I can't attest to whether it feels cheap or not like that. I'm always concerned about that with the lower cost stuff, but I always just see the like $4,000 desk lamps from like designer companies that always look really cool, but I obviously am never going to buy anything like that unless I somehow, I don't know, maybe I can sell all my Kindle Bellas. Your weekly shortcuts update. But this is cool. I like just the HomeKit. It's a desk lamp, so it's kind of got the straight bar up and then a bar coming out over, as opposed to like a literal, what's the movie that intro with the lamp that jumps at Pixar?
Pixar.
Oh, okay, yeah. It doesn't look like that, but it's just kind of more of a little bar, but it's got some touch controls on it too, and HomeKit support. So this is pretty interesting. I've actually been looking for desk lamps because I always do notice that, particularly when I have my nice video lights on, is the second I turn that off, I'm like, man, it's kind of dark in here. And it's hard to get stuff directly over your desk sometimes. So this has got a good little base, and then it looks like it could almost like sit behind my monitor stand and then come out over the top, and I could still see. So I might get this.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it too. It's really pretty.
The HomeKit support and everything is like, I don't know of a single other lamp that has this kind of style that works with HomeKit. So that's pretty appealing.
Agreed. I think it's worth checking out. So I know many of us were excited when Nanoleaf announced that they were going to be rolling out Thread border router support for their more recent panel lights that you can hang on the wall, the shapes and the elements panels. And then after teasing that they were going to do that, then they did roll out the feature, which would make them into border routers. So the idea would be that you would have some ways to connect to the Thread border router, to your Thread network with more options. And it doesn't look like things went as they expected, so they did roll this back. But I think that it's going to be happening. Obviously they're working on it enough to have thought they could roll it out, so will probably be happening soon.
Yeah, it's saying one of the linked articles in the story that we were mentioning is saying that it'll be sometime in August, but they don't know for sure. So it makes sense. This stuff is pretty tricky, and especially with just kind of the newness of the technology, I want these companies to get it right. And so I'd rather have them roll it back and do it well, and then people are satisfied, versus it just being like a overall crummy experience or something like that.
100%, particularly given the fact that there's it's purpose built to not involve a lot of troubleshooting or work on the user's part. So if it's not working as it stands, I wouldn't know how to fix it anyway.
Yeah.
There's the whole point of Thread is the network configuration happens, and the most you should ever do is provision a device to join the Thread network. After that, it's supposed to handle everything else. And so if you're going to have a system that does that, then it has to work as expected, or you will have, as you said, the potential for complaints and issues on that end. So, yeah, I want them to get it right. Nanoleaf's other devices that do have Thread support are excellent. So it's not one of these situations where, they don't have a history of Thread, and they have Thread border routers in the way of their LED lights. So given that, there shouldn't be I don't have a personal concern that they're not going to roll out something that works. I think what they're doing is this doesn't work as well as what we already have out there that does work well. So let's make sure that this works just as well. And I like that. I think that's great. I think that that's something worth waiting on and making sure it's solid.
Yep, agreed.
All right. I think that means that it's time for us to talk about the project for the week. And this time I promised that I was going to do some follow-up. And so I did my research. I pulled that Amazon Echo Dot study that we talked about last week. This was a study done at Northeastern University that was looking at the Amazon Echo Dot and saying that when the Amazon Echo Dot is factory reset, there can still be information pulled from the device that tells you Wi-Fi credentials and other personal information. And I was curious kind of what exactly this meant, what it meant in terms of if your device was truly reset through the process that Amazon recommends versus, maybe missing out on some steps, and how everything is involved. And so I looked into the study to get some more information. And what's fascinating is that there's a lot to this. So the first thing that I want to point to, because they go through and they talk about the Echo platform and the different devices that are available on the Echo, or the different pieces that make up the Echo platform, and the way that the memory storage works on this platform versus others using eMMC flash versus different types of flash memory. And then given that type of flash storage, what it means that they can do with it. So there's one thing that I wanted to point out, and it says that they're talking about one of the misleading features, so to speak, of these devices. So if you look up how to factory reset an Echo device, with the Echo Dot in particular, you are meant to hold down the action button for 25 seconds. After you hold down the action button for 25 seconds, the device will signal that it has been reset by turning the light ring orange. But here's the problem. 25 seconds or more turns the light ring orange, triggering the factory reset option. But holding down the action button for 10 to 15 seconds will make the light ring flash yellow and will show that it is resetting the network settings. So in other words, you might be holding down the button, and if you didn't pay attention to what the settings say, then you could just be resetting the Wi-Fi and not actually factory resetting the device. So you start to see that ring, and you lift up your finger thinking that it's done, and then you think that your device is factory reset, and it turns out, no, you had to keep holding it. So although user error, it is totally understandable how someone might think that the device was factory reset, even though it wasn't. So I agree with the study on that point. I think that that's something, again, at the same time, Amazon is doing its due diligence there in providing the instructions that the person should follow. And ultimately, that is on the user to read those instructions thoroughly and properly do the reset of the device. But I agree that that can be confusing. You start to see the lights flash, and if you didn't read it, then you would not know for sure.
Real quick. Is this only relevant, though, also because of the type of memory that they use? Versus
no,
if I remove my HomePod but then didn't factory reset the HomePod.
So this is only speaking.
And it's just built differently.
It's built different. This is only speaking of Amazon devices. So I can't. It's not just the memory. It's the way that Amazon goes about removing versus not removing. So this is like even early, before we dig into the kind of the memory stuff. What they were showing is ultimately you've got two problems here. One is that people don't factory reset. And so they were looking at potential causes for why people aren't properly resetting their devices. And then should someone miraculously factory reset their device, they were showing that you could still access data at that point. So I'm still on this earlier part of some people don't factory reset the device. This may be one reason why. Now,
but that also poses the same security risk that even if you just misproperly didn't fully reset it, they could still scrape it. And then the second part of the story is that even deeper, once it's reset, some of the memory stuff can cause that. I'm just trying to make sure I follow both of those threads.
If you don't reset it, then it's 100% going to have the data on there. If you do reset it,
much easier too.
Yeah.
But can they still get it even though it's supposed to be secure or whatever? Is that okay.
If you don't reset it, then, and this is the thing too. I think I'll have to keep going in order for that to make this to make more sense, because there are basically, they kind of followed the steps and they showed what is available at these different points. So I'm going to go into what's available, what data is available depending on what the person did. So again, they were seeing, the process of actually resetting so that they could kind of establish a baseline of what does this resetting do? What does that resetting do? What does it mean, et cetera. So we started with that. You properly hit the button and hold it down to reset the device. We'll get to what happens after the fact. But just in terms of, you think you can factory reset the device, this is the process that you follow. The other thing that you have to know is that on top of factory resetting the device, you have to unpair the device from your Amazon account. So you have to go into the AliXA app or go to alixa.amazon.com or somewhere, find the device on your account and remove it from your account. If you do not do that, then there will also be an easier way for someone to get information. We'll talk about what that information is in a minute. Now, this is the other thing. If you are in a place where there's no Wi-Fi for the device to connect to, so like it's not connected to your Wi-Fi, and you do that reset step, you go through and you factory reset it, then as soon as it connects to Wi-Fi again, it will repair with your account. It is only if you do two things. You go into the AliXA app or wherever you want to go to AliXA and remove the device from your account. That's one way to do the one part, so that when you do the local factory reset, you can do that without needing to be connected to Wi-Fi. Or to sort of solve it all, you just factory reset the device while it's connected to Wi-Fi, and then it can go ahead and handle the whole kind of removal from your account process. But people don't know that. So sometimes they will remove it from their account and not do the physical factory reset process, which is going to give people access to some data. Sometimes they will only do the physical factory reset process, but if they didn't have that internet connection at the time, then it's going to keep their connection to the account, and that's going to pull certain data. So let me go to what different data is available based on what you do. So these are the different states of devices that they tested. A device was not reset and it was still connected to the cloud. That means that they didn't remove the device from their account, and they also didn't do the physical reset option of holding it down for 25 seconds. State 2 was the device was not reset, but they did remove the binding from the cloud. So that means they didn't do the physical process, but they did the process of removing the device with the AliXA app. State 3 was the device was reset, but they didn't remove it from the AliXA app. It says in this scenario, it's super rare that this happens, as it requires that the device reset happen while the device did not have an active internet connection. The data partition was wiped, but the Amazon cloud was not aware the device has been reset. When restoring this information, the device can be reconnected to the cloud and to the previous owner's account. So if you somehow come into a situation where you're not connected to Wi-Fi, but you did the physical reset, when that gets connected again, it's going to connect via the cloud. And then state 4 is that the device was reset and the cloud binding was deleted. This is the one you want to do. This is the most secure of all of them. Or, of course, never having used the device in the first place, which is state 5. So depending on... Go ahead.
I was just laughing. It's like, yeah, the thing said, if they never use it, it does not contain personal information. It's like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yes. So... depending on how the device was set up, it can make a difference. So when they set up a device, they said, AliXA, who am I? And the device would return the previous owner's name. The reconnection to the spoofed access point did not produce a notice in the AliXA app nor a notification by email. So this was one of those situations where they weren't connected to the local Wi-Fi, but the account was still connected because they didn't remove it from the AliXA app. They were able to say, who am I? And then they did some smart stuff or some clever stuff of saying, hey, what grocery stores are nearby? What restaurants are nearby? And by doing that, you could sort of start to figure out maybe where someone's location is. But let's get into the nitty-gritty details. The hardware stuff. Because this is wild. This is super involved, what they have to do. So they talk about how flash-based storage is set up, how this particular type of flash-based storage is set up. And depending on what they did, they had to do some really interesting stuff. So for one thing, if the device is, let me see. Okay, so if the device is still provisioned, meaning that they did not remove the device from the cloud. Correct. If they reset the device, but they did not remove the device from the cloud, or if they, or excuse me, it's the reverse. If the device locally has been reset, so they press the button, but it's I'm sorry. That's where it gets confusing. It's the other one that's a little bit easier. They go into the Amazon app and they remove the account, but they didn't reset the data. So it's still provisioned essentially. This part requires actual physical access to the device and requires some hardware. They kind of say in the study, it doesn't cost that much. It's about $100 of hardware that you will need, or a little more than $100 of hardware that you would need. Come on, that's not an amount of money that an average person is going to spend on a single device. But that aside, if it is completely reset following Amazon's own rules, it requires even more work. And this is where it's going to get wild. But before we get there, I'll talk about what you need to do. So first of all, to do the method where the device is provisioned and they didn't completely reset it, you have to reverse engineer the actual board and find the points where the board is attached to the flash signal, so the flash memory. Upon finding those, they ended up having to not only take things apart, but they had to use conductive needles to find the different parts of the board because the individual leads were buried. So they had to use a conductive needle to get down in and find the proper boards in order to map things out and use that to help figure out what data they could pull. From there, they needed to connect the sort of system on a chip to the clock, the inbuilt clock that's on the chip, in order to they connected the inbuilt clock that's on the chip to the ground, which basically kind of disables the inbuilt clock. And so then that way they have access to the system without it kind of resetting or redoing things. It was that by that point, then they were able to use a system to actually dump the contents of the PCB or of the flash onto their own devices that they could then use to do data retrieval. They said it takes about 20 to 30 minutes per device, in addition to the time that they needed for the data retrieval itself. Now, if they wanted to do this with a device that's completely, following Amazon steps, you remove it from your account and you reset the device locally. You press the button and you hold it for the right amount of time. Yeah. You think that everything's gone. This is where things get just so involved. Essentially, in order to pull all of the data off of the device, you have to, due to the security requirements that are involved, you have to solder and desolder the components, the RAM, every single time you do a pull from it. So to pull all of the data, you have to constantly desolder and resolder that chip to the proper board in order to pull any of the information off. So they said the reballing, which is part of soldering, placement and soldering of the IC requires precision, as the correct connections of the RAM is required for the operation of the device. And on top of that, it says that you can potentially cause damage to the solder mask of the PCB or the eMCP IC, which these are just components. And both components are exposed to thermal stress in the process, obviously. So with every iteration, you risk ruining the thing. So if someone factory resets the device, it's going to take a crap ton of work to get this to work, and you may ruin it on the first go. So all that's to say, it is possible. It is possible. But that does take a lot of work. Now, they were able to figure out a way to use to figure out how to get the part where you completely reset everything to work without having to desolder and resolder, which involved using some specialized chips that you could kind of set up as a dummy. This is for nerds who super understand this thing. You've kind of got to read through it. I'm not going to read these 3 paragraphs. But essentially, they were able to make a hybrid model where they spoofed some components so that they didn't have to constantly remove and reconnect. So in doing that, they did gain more access to the data. However, we go from there to talk about how they went about pulling the data from the chip and then also figuring out what parts of the data corresponded to what things and what was actually information that they wanted to pull versus what was just kind of empty information that they didn't need. So they started by simulating the process. And at that point, I'm going, okay, I don't know now, because you're using a simulation, you're not using the real thing. So I don't know if this is, necessarily accurate, because you may be missing something that Amazon's doing. However, they do end up testing it on used devices, and they are able to get this to work. So here's what's important to understand. Two tips. First of all, if you want the ultimate in device security, do not resell an Amazon Echo Dot. Yeah. I mean, if you want the ultimate in device security, don't buy any of these devices in the first place. But if you do, and you want the most security that you can have after you've decided to do this, don't resell it. If you do choose to resell it or give it to a friend or something,
or just trash it, though.
Yeah. Then you need to not only factory reset the device, following Amazon's guidelines of removing it from your account and then physically factory resetting the device, but you also need to leave it plugged in for a period of time after you factory reset the device. And that is because Amazon's Echo Dot and other Echo devices are using a specialized version of Android called Fire OS, which has garbage collection built into it. And garbage collection will come along and do that removal process. So what's happening is essentially, due to the state of the flash storage that's being used, there's a portion of the flash storage that is just waiting for errors and other things to happen, and it pulls that data out of the way and kind of keeps it from the processing that's happening. And so it just keeps pulling that away. And then a garbage collection process comes along and says, okay, you don't need this anymore, you don't need this anymore. But if the garbage collection process doesn't get to come along and clear out that garbage, then it's sitting there waiting to be used and waiting to be taken advantage of. So you need to let it sit and let it garbage collect in order to remove that information. So keeping it plugged in for a little while can actually take care of this problem. This is the important point, is it's much more trivial, although still difficult, for provisioned devices to be able to get the information from them. But again, at the same time, it's still quite difficult. From there, they looked at what they could get just by talking to it, and we talked a little bit about that. You can start to narrow things down. But by pulling the log files off of these, they were able to get name, username, email address. They weren't able to get the password. They were able to get someone's SSID, and by using SSID in pair with MAC addresses, they could find someone's pretty close to specific location. And then the one thing that I think is important is that, or another thing that I think is important is something that they pointed out that I hadn't considered. If they bought some broken devices as well as part of their used device purchase to see what they could pull from. Broken devices, if you have buttons that don't work, then you can't factory reset them. So don't sell them on eBay. Do not sell them on eBay or wherever. Don't sell them at all. If they're broken and you can't reset them, your information is still going to be on there because you have no way to reset it. They talked a little bit about what you could do, what should be done to solve this. And here's the most egregious thing, in my opinion. The eMMC flash that that these Echo devices use has a built-in feature to remove information that is part of the user data partition when you do a reset, but it's not being used. It's called sanitize or secure trim. And that could be triggered when a factory reset happens to remove the data from the user partition. But for some reason, it's not activated. We don't know why. And then the other thing is that, and this is just the blatant fact of it, the data is not encrypted. User data on these devices stored in this flash storage is not encrypted. If they would encrypt that data, then you wouldn't be able to pull it in the logs and get access to it. They looked at different devices, the Google Home Mini, the Amazon Echo Dot, of course, the Echo Show, the Amazon Fire TV, and the Xiaomi Smart AI speaker with display. Only the Xiaomi Smart AI speaker with display encrypted the user data.
I kind of would have assumed it would be the opposite.
Right, same. But that's the only one that actually encrypted user data. All of the rest of them, if you could get the log files and find out right where you needed to look, then you could come across that information that's available in those places. So ultimately, yes, there's no true way to keep yourself 100% protected from having your data taken. But I think anyone who's sold one thus far can rest easy in some level, knowing that it would take a lot of work. Yeah. And what it seems to be that they get at the most is your the name of the owner, the username of the owner, and the email address of the owner, which is often something that you could find online. And then if they get the SSID and the MAC address of the owner, then they could find your location. But passwords and things like that, it doesn't appear that they're able to pull. So
still, I don't like that information still, though. I still think this is bad. It feels like pretty solid validation for people who are like, I'm never going to put an Amazon Echo in my thing.
Yeah, 100%.
And like any sort of, I have no idea what level security stuff is, but I just think of like state level actors. It's like they're going to go through that effort to get, if you had an Echo in the White House or whatever. So like,
hopefully that's not the case,
especially just the fact that they could fix this is like, they should do that. I mean, I don't know if that would be a software fix or they'd require new products. But yeah, it is just telling. I don't know. This does just seem like confirming those fears that this information is on those smart devices specifically, and in some ways because they're just being a bad steward of your data, not because it's even necessary. I mean, maybe there's some sort of, they would claim the necessary nature of it, but just in terms of the fact that it could be fixed or other devices aren't doing this and they don't have those same issues. It definitely seems like a bad thing, especially just because Echo Dots seem like the kind of thing that you just unplug and then like throw away and you're not going to like double factory reset it most of the time. Even the one that I know that's not set up in my closet that goes off every once in a while is probably in one of those states and has my personal information on it. And so like, that is just, I think the part about keeping it plugged in and then having it properly reset itself also seems counterintuitive, that in order to get my information off of the network, I mean, it makes sense, but like I need to keep it on the network for a while versus just unplug it from the wall and it stops working. So I hope that they address these issues. Do they have any points about what specifically Amazon should do, or
encrypt user data, use the built-in security features that are part of eMMC, or be. I didn't talk about one of them because it gets a little bit too muddy. It's called wear leveling, aware erasing of data. Wear leveling is another process that has to do with flash storage, and so I didn't want to talk about wear leveling. But yeah, they give 3 different things, of which user data encryption seems to be the most obvious one. If the user data is encrypted on the device, then you don't have this issue.
Yeah. Well, I hope that they address those things. And yeah, like that actual other level of attack too is there. Do you have any final thoughts on this as in from doing all that research?
No, other than it was really interesting to kind of learn a little bit more about what they were doing. And then also the study has some related work in here that talks about some other forensics analyses that have taken place related to Echo devices and other smart cameras or smart speakers. So ultimately, it sounds like if you want to be the most secure, just stay away from these things, which we kind of knew ultimately.
Yeah. I'm curious specifically for HomePod and all that. Like, I know that Apple does that encryption, so I wonder if it's just specifically Amazon stuff versus, you said that they could get it off Google Home Minis too. I want to see more on this story because it does seem like it kind of like drops with that fear mongering bit on top that's also legit this time. And so it's like kind of hard to parse all the immediate stories because like, I think even last week you were like, that doesn't seem like it would be that bad. And I was like, no, I'm pretty sure this is worse than the average one of those stories. And so I want to just hear more from like the security community or from these companies themselves.
Yep, I agree. All right, let's move on to our picks of the week. It's time for Matthew Casanelli's picks of the week.
Yeah, I sort of have a grab bag because the folks at Elgato just did a big announcement today with like 6 different products. They have the main one that I'm interested in is their Facecam, which is a 1080p 60 webcam that has a whole lens in it. So it actually, I think it's was it f1.7 or 2.0? I don't remember exactly, but it's basically a DSLR streaming webcam situation. I'm curious to see how it'll compare to just my actual camera because I'm pretty much at the point where I technically even have a 4K webcam, but I don't think it's any good. The Logitech one, it's like just because it has that high resolution doesn't mean that it has the look that I want necessarily. And so I'm very curious to just see how this performs. It should have like good color quality, a little bit of depth of field.
Are you getting
wide
it?
Angle stuff. Yeah, I ordered it already. So.
Okay, you're gonna have to tell me what you think because while I'm now doing most of my stuff in the studio, I do stream. I still stream D&D from my home studio, and there may be an occasional situation where I am need to stream from my home studio as well. And something like this where you've got a big old lens built in there is pretty neat.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't know, I might still use my main camera for YouTube videos, but I think for streaming, I am just like, for some reason, I don't mind as much. It's just like, I don't want to do a whole teleprompter setup for this show, for example. Like I technically could, but it kind of would just be like excessively good quality footage. And I want something that's a bridge between that and what I currently have, where I would still feel comfortable putting it on YouTube, but maybe I do like my fancier videos with my real camera for A-roll. So Elgato also came out with like the Stream Deck 2, which has, speaking of those Amazon Dot covers, this is what made me think of it, is you can replace the cover of the Stream Deck now. So there could be
Is there anything else that's
versions.
different about it though?
It's got I think it's just an updated version. Like it's got I think it's USB-C and the cable detaches, which it didn't used to.
Oh, I like that the cable detaches. That's one thing.
Yeah,
I don't like.
It's kind of just like, it's called Mark II. So
I wonder if the LCD display is a little bit higher resolution.
I don't think so. I think it's generally just designed for, they have a whole button designer in their app too now, so that you can make your own custom icons. And mine actually, my Stream Deck just isn't working today only. So I'm like, did they somehow just, it's like, whoops, need to get a new one.
Yeah, mine's been working fine. It's just, those keys are really, any icon I do, it's so fuzzy on the edges. So if they made a higher resolution display, I would get it. But I'm looking at the technical specifications, and it looks like the only thing that's changed is the cable, and it's still USB 2.0, even though it's a detachable cable.
Oh, it is? I thought it was USB-C.
It's USB-C, but it's USB 2.0.
No, I mean, it doesn't transfer data, so it doesn't need it. It's just a power and then basic commands. But then they also put out like the Wave XLR, which is a audio interface that has just like a big dial on the front that can also.
I thought it was like another mic, but it's an actual. Oh, wow!
And I think it can work as it's just got like different controls through the button, the big dial on front. An odd thing that I really like is that the XLR cable is in the back, because I always have it makes sense in the studio that you guys probably need the cables in the front so you can reach it all. Yeah, but on a desk, I don't want the cable coming out and then going immediately back around the desk. And so this is very much like you can get everything you need to stream from Elgato right now.
I might have to try this out. Yeah, it's got
Phantom. No, it's got plus 75 dB boost. So it's actually like a legit, it should be able to power any mic. And they've got new arms and like a light strip and everything to go along with their lights. So you really can get like a whole streaming setup. You'll probably pay more than what you could get building the same thing from other products. But it'll at least be easier and integrated. And they have the smarts around it too. So that like from the Stream Deck, you can dim your lights and things like that, which is pretty cool.
Interesting. Yeah, I might have to check out that Wave XLR because right now I've got it's a Thunderbolt interface, and I don't like it. And then I also have a MixPre 3 that I was using for home studio stuff, but I always had to turn it off and turn it back on to get the system to recognize it again, and that had a bunch of issues. And
that's a good point. My mic is always on, and I don't know. Am I supposed to just unplug this? Maybe you guys in the studio can tell me, but I don't know the proper technique for.
I think the Scarlett works well in that you don't have to do that. For some reason, that MixPre just always have to restart it. And
I think it just weirds me out that if I talk loudly in my office, I see my microphone light up because it's just on 24/7. But yeah. I don't know.
So all of that you can check out at Elgato.com. And then for me, I'm just mentioning a little one. Anker sold these. I think they were on sale one time for a 2-pack whenever I spotted them. So I grabbed a couple. But it's kind of nice when you've got a table with cables that normally would fall away, especially now that I'm back in the studio, moving my computer back and forth between home and the studio. I've got the Thunderbolt cables that plug into either side, and they would typically fall off the back of the desk. But these cable management cord keepers are really nice. So you kind of clamp this little blue rectangle right behind the plug, and you stick the blue bar. It's not microsuction, but it's
it looks like it.
It's close. It is. There's this other kind of. It's a little bit more gooey, but it's what I love about it is it's reusable. You can wash it and then it will be reusable. But anyway, you put the little clamp on to the cable, and then the bar itself has a magnet in it. And then you can, when you let it go, the cable just sort of magnets to that bar that you can put on the back of your desk. So each of those are held nice and neat in the back, and then you can bring them forward and plug them in as you need to, and then slide them back and keep them there.
I totally misinterpreted that. So instead of, I have this on my desk downstairs, and it's like I have to either push it in through the little slot every time, or just like leave it hanging out loose above, or slide, because it's got a MacBook Pro cable, which is extra thick. I can't just like easily slide it through the little cable tie thing. But these go around the cable. There's separate magnetic parts that go around the cable, and then those just attach to the pad. That's clever.
Yeah, super neat. I've had some in the past, but it was some, random Amazon company, and they didn't work that well. Anchor, I have trusted with all my other stuff, and I got these, and they feel really nice, and the magnet is nice and strong, works super well. So if you're looking for cable management that works, and as you said, is less fiddly, this was great for that. So nice. $17.99 for, I think that's for the 2-pack. You get a 2-pack of these, and even less for the single pack, $11.99 for these.
I love technology like this. This is just like, it's like cable ties in the future. I don't know. Like, it's like, I never would have thought that you could advance how you make cable ties now, but now I'm like, man, I totally want this. Like, I have Lightning and an Apple Watch thing that I need at my desk, and they are just like kind of hanging around, and it's like they could just be magnetized there. Nice.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. I think, Kevin, you might be pasting that link in Club Twit, maybe. I see you are hovered over that. Oh, no, you were just going there. I can do that. Someone for folks who are listening, they're like, what is he talking about? Someone was asking what cable management I was sharing, so I've included a link there. Folks, this brings us to the end of this episode of Smart Tech Today. If you have questions or feedback, then you can send that to stt@twit.tv. And share it there. Of course, you can tune in live to watch us record the show every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific, where we will be recording the show. But the best way to get the show is by subscribing. And you do that by going to twit.tv/STT and subscribing to the show in audio or video formats. You click on the one you want, and then you choose the provider you want to use where you can get the show. We suggest video, but you can also do audio. We do try to be mindful of that. I should mention Club Twit. If you would like to help support the network and also get some good goodies, you should join Club Twit at twit.tv/clubtwit for $7 a month. You get all of our shows ad-free. You also get access to an exclusive Twit Plus bonus feed with content you won't find elsewhere. And the best part, I think, access to the members-only Club Twit Discord server where you can join us, Twit folks, and other awesome Club Twit members and hang out and chat in Discord. If you're wondering what the heck is Discord, if you've ever used Slack, it's a lot like Slack or any other kind of chat application where you've got multiple rooms with places to talk about different things. And so, you can join us there. And some shows, we even have people come up audio-wise and ask questions and get to interact live on the show. So check that out.
Plan one of those sometimes.
Absolutely. We do need to. Twit.tv/clubtwit to check that out. Matthew Casanelli, if folks want to follow you online and check out all the great work you're doing, where do they go to do so?
You can follow me on Twitter at Matt Casanelli, and I post all sorts of beta complaints and previews of my 18 different focus screens and things like that. So check it out. What about you?
You can find me at Micah Sargent on many a social media network, or you can head to chihuahua.coffee, CHIHUAHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I exist, most often online. I think
you exist offline as well.
I do. Well, I mean, I don't know. Can you prove that?
If I'm not on the show, how would I know? I don't know. That was supposed to be some sort of like the cat in the box thing. Didn't work out.
All right. That's that. It's time to say good afternoon to all of our smart assistants. Well, this is awkward. Move it along. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Android may be just another operating system, but when you check out all about Android, you'll realize that Android's also a ton of fun. Join me, Jason Howell, and my co-hosts, Florence Ion and Ron Richards, and a whole slew of guests that we invite on the show every week. Every Tuesday, in fact, we talk about the latest Android news, hardware, apps, and we answer a ton of your Android-related questions as well. Don't miss All About Android at twit.tv.